Hi guys, John Mackey here, Credit Genius with Give Me Credit podcast. And next to me here on that beautiful screen is JS. And JS is a
Mortgage underwriting.
underwriting.
Yeah, good old
We'll cut
mortgage
that part
business.
out. Yeah, how can we forget that? Um,
Mhm.
but
Well, we
yeah,
try sometimes.
yeah, it's a tough field, I'll tell you. And we decided to come together and put together this platform about credit debt collections and talk to the people about the real truth and the information. Now, we've gone over a variety of information so far. Today, we thought we'd take a little look back at some of the stuff that we've already covered, in particular, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, because I've
Yeah.
seen some new information that I'm going to be writing about in the future here. And it's all about uh, the Fair Credit Reporting Act and what's affecting it and how to challenge things and so forth. And I want to get into that with JS. So that was a long-winded way to say, how are you, JS?
I'm doing great, Sean. Thank you. How are you?
Good,
Good.
good. You know, it's a fun life we live, I'll tell you. Uh,
Yeah, well, it's interesting right now, that's for sure. So many changes.
yes, for sure there are. And so today, guys, we're just going to start talking about and chatting about the Fair Credit Reporting Act and anything else that pops into our minds regarding these topics. So, uh, why don't you go ahead, JS, and
Yeah, well, one
let's
of
start,
my favorites.
start this off.
Yeah, one of my favorites is the Fair Credit Reporting Act. I am I'm a huge fan of it. In the business, the banking business, I think I mentioned this on another one, we have to constantly take classes to stay up on the regs and the rules. Fair Credit Reporting Act is reviewed every single year. Every single
Right.
year, we have to go through it and go through a seminar and take a test on it. And you have to, of course, pass these tests. Now, having done it for 30 plus years, this particular act has been around since 1970. So
Right.
pretty familiar with it.
Yeah, the
But
ironic part about it is that I shouldn't call it ironic, but prior to the FCRA, there were no rights that an individual has. You didn't have the right to see a credit report. You didn't have a right to pull your own credit report. In fact, it was policy, and in some companies it still is policy, where if you apply for credit, they don't have the right to show you that credit report. You've got to get it yourself, which at
mhm,
least we can do now.
yeah,
And there was many, many abuses back then. And so why was it created? It was created because there's no fairness back then. It's getting better. There was no accuracy or privacy. So they started to try and fix it. And it's been taking many years in order to do that. There's still a lot of abuses in credit reporting. But rather than
yeah.
going down the proverbial rabbit hole, let's pull it back a little bit. And
Well,
why don't you tell me what are your thoughts on the rights regarding access to the credit report, JS?
I am a fan of this one, but what I'm not a fan of is how most consumers don't really know their rights. And, this is what, 56, 57 years old now, this act, 55 years old. And consumers still don't know their rights. And I can tell you, as a mortgage underwriter, they have to give you, when it comes to the mortgage side, they have to give you all these disclosures. Well, it's so overwhelming. People don't sit down and just read these disclosures. They don't know their rights. One of the things I like about the Fair Credit Reporting Act is you have a right to get a copy of your credit reports. But you also have the right to privacy. It's very funny because, again, I started in this industry way back when, and believe me, it was 20 years after this Fair Credit Reporting Act came into being. And I was working with a bunch of guys in a small bank, and they still were in the habit of pulling a credit report and just handing it to the consumer, which you're not allowed to do. There, you could be sitting at the table, and this is your own individual credit report, and they hand it over, and they hand it to his wife, or vice versa.
Right.
It's the wife's, and they hand it to the husband, and that's not right. That's not fair. That's not private. Um,
Hmm.
so I think people don't know that they have a right to these things, and I like that we're covering it. You have your privacy, but you also have your verifiability, the accuracy aspect of it. And again, I think this is being talked about more, especially with all these credit repair companies acting about how easy that is to get stuff off your credit report, blah, blah, blah. There are rules and regs, and you do have rights, but it has to be done correctly. If people aren't educating themselves, or like in our case, we're trying to get this information out there. If they're not
Right.
listening to this information, they may not realize the right steps to take. They may not even realize their basic rights. So that's
Well,
one of my favorite things.
I think there's a fear.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm doing some research right now on debt collectors, and I wrote a book on debt collection.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be updating it here shortly. But I created something back then. It's called uh, Your Mackey's Credit Rights, and we'll be going over that later. But it all kind of started with the Miranda warning. And people, when they're pulled over by police, are very, they don't know what to say, whether they're being arrested, whether it's a traffic stop, and they're being detained. What is this Miranda right? So then you've got the Fair Credit Reporting Act, which are basically your Miranda warning for pulling your credit report and access to your own credit data, who has it, who doesn't, where they can give it, so forth. Now, again, we'll get into the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, down the road here in about a month, we'll start talking about that. And I've posted some information about that.
Yeah.
You've got this warning, but people are afraid. They're afraid that they're going to, excuse me, piss somebody off. You don't talk back to the cops. You know what happens when you do. You don't talk back to credit reporting agencies because you fear like you don't have the power. You can't stand tall. You'd rather cower and take the punishment if that's the way that it is, almost being a servant.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I go overboard with the rights, in the right to a free credit report. Well, now the law says once every year you've got a right to a free credit report from each one of the bureaus. Well,
Right.
then someone says, "Well, I've heard you can do it once every 3 months." No, the truth is you can do it once a week right now. Now, why was that? It was a stipulation through the COVID Act that said that you were going to bring this. We're not going to change the law, but you, the bureaus, change your policies on how often we pull the credit report. They said, "Oh, okay, you twisted our arm. We'll do it once a week." My caveat here is that this is going to change, I believe, down the road here very shortly, to where we're going to go back to once a year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as of right now, it is really once a week. In reality, what should it be? I say once a month, especially with all the fraud out there. But that's a whole other issue. And again, down the rabbit hole we go. We're not going to do that.
Well, no, we've kind of talked about that stuff before. We are just kind of doing a summary right now. I
Right.
think I think that when it comes to the Fair Credit Reporting Act, people don't understand. Well, again, we said in the very beginning when we started this topic, if you were to go read the Fair Credit Reporting Act, it's like 117 pages of legalese jargon that you'll fall asleep or you'll just throw it away because it's so infuriating to try to read. But we went down point by point in our prior podcasts. And I think that there's a lot of things that people don't realize. We kind of just hit on it a minute ago. It used to be where, a lot of women, millennials, my daughters, they didn't even realize that my mother could not get credit on her own. She didn't have
Right.
a right to her own credit file. My mother could not even have a credit card being married unless her husband said she could.
That's
There
right.
was there were all kinds of things going on back then, back in the day, that people today may not realize at all. Their parents never talked about it. You know, there definitely is, these are not things that we are taught in school. But that's how important these rules and regulations and these rights came into play. It's not just even a matter of, I think people know on a general basis that they can have a right to the credit report, that they can dispute things, that they have financial privacy, they have these basic things, but what they don't realize is how new it really is and the level that it wasn't there before. So I
You know,
don't
that's
take
so
this for
true.
granted. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people are confused about whether they can challenge something that might be true or might not be, because there's a part in that law, in that Fair Credit Reporting Act, which is about 117 pages long, and you've got the right to challenge these items. One of the criteria is got to be verifiable.
Mm-hmm.
How do you challenge something without, it's got to be verified? And the only way to find out if it's verified is if you challenge it.
Yes.
The only way. So you
Yeah.
can't tell me, and the bureaus try to say it all the time. If you think it's correct, just leave it be. Don't do it. Um, or how do you challenge? Well, do you go online and do it? Do you write a letter to the bureaus? You know, do some people say, well, some of these gurus out there say, well, make it personal and make it just weird. Hey, you guys with the credit bureaus, you suck. And this is wrong. And I'm truthful about this.
Yeah.
That was part of the portfolio of letters that these companies have to challenge debt. No, that's not the way you do it.
No.
You do it writing, you send it out certified. That way you've got documentation as to when it left and when it has to be back.
Great.
So,
And again, that comes back to the rights. People may realize a little bit about it, but they don't have it all. But these are important rights, and that was my point. Is you may not realize how different it was back then, but these rights are paramount. And you have to take advantage of them. So I'm going to take this moment to again remind you: go to annualcreditreport.com and get your credit report, because before you can even think about challenging and disputes and everything that Mr. John Mackey is going to teach you, you need to know what's on your credit report first. But John, you mentioned there's some changes coming. I'm curious.
with the Fair Credit Reporting Act,
With just in general with credit and how it's going to be going?
oh, well, we got a change coming up here. First, there's one that's immediately hitting. And in fact, I'm going to be doing a news story on it here shortly. It has to do with the buy now, pay later. And it's going to be hitting credit reports soon. I have a feeling a lot of people thought that because it doesn't hit the credit reports, it wasn't tracked through credit reports, that they thought they could miss a couple payments and make it back up and it's not going to affect their score. That is true. It didn't back then. But with the advent of be careful what you wish for, it's now coming back onto the credit, is coming on to the credit report, and those lates are going to show up. Okay.
There's a lot of buy now, pay later companies, and most of them are apps, that I know. I can tell you that out of all of them, the only one I saw reporting on a regular basis was Affirm, which is, of course, is the big Facebook one. Amazon Marketplace. Not Amazon Marketplace. Yeah, Amazon Marketplace. The Amazon Shopping. Affirm was the big one. And they report. But there are so many others that didn't report. This is huge.
Yeah, yeah, it is. The problem with buy now, pay later is that it's typically in 4 payment increments. So you buy something, you could split it up as much as four trade or one trade line divided into 4 payments will do you very little good in the credit reporting agency with their scoring. But if you go negative, it's going to hurt you a lot. So the downside, there's more downside than there is upside to it, period.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Okay. Number two, we've got the new FICO 10T. Now, they haven't said when they're going to start it. We don't know yet. They say within a year or two, and that all depends upon, and we're going to throw on these fancy names, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, because they're the ones that determine what scoring system they use. And now they're saying they're going to merge the credit reporting. Instead of 2, 4, and 5 for the mortgage, they're now going to go to a VantageScore 4 and a FICO 10T. The T stands for trended data. So they're going to take 24 months of your revolving debt and average it out. So you can now, but you won't be in the near future, pay off all your credit card debt at, let's say, 2 months before closing and have it affect your score. It's not going to work anymore. A lot of people are going to be confused about that. And why not? And I'm talking about even loan officers.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking too. They're going to be very confused.
Yeah. They're going to say, I have no idea how this is working, because all I want to do is take a look at the score, what the score is, what the steps are. You're going to be doing the same thing and saying, okay, does it meet the criteria? Does it not? You're going to go over the criteria, and it's going to be a bugaboo. Now, there's an old term.
Well, I understood it.
Yeah, well, enough said.
Exactly. Okay, so with these changes, you wrote an excellent article, by the way. It was your news article. I just recently read it. Was it Monday that one came out?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an excellent article. And I'm going to, again, take this moment to plug. If you are not following John Mackey on Substack, you really should be. His news articles are things that affect your every single day life. I mean, obviously, there is a lot of news out there, political, otherwise, but this is news that affects you directly. Credit news, things that are happening, even with rules and regulations and the Consumer Finance Board of Protection. I mean, there's so many things that affect you on a daily basis. John is covering that stuff. That's who I go to for my news. So I highly suggest you go in and subscribe to John and get his Substack newsletters.
Well, thank you for that shameless plug.
Well, it was for you. I love your dad. I love your articles.
What I'm trying to do is we need to bring some of this, there needs to be an aggregate form of information that can go to the consumer that says, this is what's happening financially. We're seeing financially now more foreclosures that are coming into being right now. It's as high as it's ever been pre-COVID. Or back to when the banks fell apart back in 2008. So there's a lot of things that are happening. And if you've got the knowledge, stand tall, and we can understand what's going on. And the more you understand, the more you can plan. That's what's critical.
Yes.
Being able to plan. Jobs, interest rates we're talking about. You know, we just had a massive decrease in interest rates from, I'm going to make these numbers up, but from a 6.375 down to a 6.3. Well, that's not massive, but it's in the right direction, but it certainly isn't massive. So we've got to try to understand what's going on in the world of finance. Finance purchase price. The majority of people can't afford homes anymore. Why is that? Those are the things that I like to do in the news. And then, of course,
Mhm.
we go over credit education, credit reporting information, and debt collection defense, which is what we're starting now.
Yes, absolutely. And these are all extremely important topics that, again, affect everyday life. That is why I love your Substack, and I hope everybody signs up and starts getting informed. It's not overwhelming. It's written in a manner that everybody can understand it, and the educational factor alone is much needed. Again, these are not things we learned in school. They're still not teaching them. My daughters tell me that. Their children are not learning it. If you want to know what is affecting your life financially, follow John.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap it up for the day. And John, thank you again for an insightful 30 minutes. And
Well, you're so welcome. You're so
we will
welcome.
we will be back with more information next week.
Yes, we will. And she has not asked me to say this, but I find what JS writes about regarding applying for home loans is so critical. I'm learning stuff like I've never learned before on the different forms that are used. You've got to know your IRS code also
Yeah.
in the underwriting. And I'm telling you something, if I had to do that, suicide would be an option. I can't do that.
Luckily, I like numbers and taxes and everything else. But yeah, thank you, John. Thank you. I enjoy it. Again, I'm trying to make it easier for the consumer as well. I break it down, and hopefully that is being found as useful. Thank you for saying it is. I appreciate that.
You bet. You bet.
Well, until next time then.
Absolutely. Until next Tuesday,
Yes,
I'm going to have a great week. You
you
also.
too. Yes, thank you.
And we'll see you on the flip.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye.